This video is brought to you by CapBeast.com. Design your own custom snapbacks and hats.
Welcome back everybody to the Ultimate Breakdown here on kenanK TV. In today's video, we will be going over the Nate Diaz vs Jorge Gamebred Masvidal fight, in which I will be going over the tail of the tape, my own personal fighter cards, a full breakdown of the fight, and then at the end, I will tell you guys who I am picking to win come fight night. But before we do so, this video has been sponsored by CapBeast.com. If you guys are interested in designing and creating your own custom embroidered hats, then be sure to check out CapBeast.com with the link in the description below. Now with that being said, let us continue on with the video, starting off with the tail of the tape. The tape. Starting off with the challenger for the BMF title, Jorge Gamebred Masvidal is 34 years old, stands in at 5 foot 11 inches tall, weighing in at 170 pounds. Masvidal has a reach of 74 inches, and he is a seasoned veteran of the game with in total 47 fights, 34 victories, and 13 losses. His opponent, the reigning defending BMF on the planet, Stockton Zone Nate Diaz, is also 34 years old. He stands in at 6 feet tall, weighing in at 170 pounds, has a reach of 76 inches. He is also a veteran of the game with 31 total fights, where he won 20 of them and lost 11 of them. In this bout, the reach advantage will have to go to Nate Diaz with a 1-inch height advantage and a 2-inch reach advantage, and maybe he will also be a bit heavier come fight night. But with all that being said, this has been the tail of the tape part of the video. Let us move on to my own custom made kenanK TV fighter cards. Starting with Masvidal, his overall rating is 91, with 92 striking, 88 grappling, 93 stamina, 93 chin, 90 defense, and a 90 physicality attribute. Overall, Masvidal is a very well balanced fighter, predominantly being a striker with tremendous takedown defense and very smooth striking. You cannot really say that Masvidal has any weaknesses. He's a very well-rounded fighter, as this card shows. Switching over to Nate Diaz, he has an overall rating of 93 with 89 striking, 92 grappling, 96 stamina, 97 chin, 89 defense, and a 92 physicality attribute. When taking a look at Nate Diaz, he is a grappler who, on top of his grappling, picked up on some great boxing. However, if you were to compare his skill set in grappling alone compared to his striking overall, we're going to see that his grappling is just a lot more nuanced and just a lot better compared to his striking. His striking really consists of boxing predominantly, with occasional kicks, which you won't really see too often, with knees and elbows in the clinch. Now, if we're going to talk about his physical attributes, whether it is the ability to throw fast combinations, Diaz is not that type of a fighter. If you're going to look at power, one-hit knockout punches, he's not going to be that guy either. So when it comes to power, reflexes, stuff like that, Diaz is a bit lacking on that side. So that is why I gave him an 89 striking attribute. Now, if you're going to look at his standout attributes, we have his chin and stamina. Nate has always been a fighter who can take a lot of punishment yet still pull through. I have really yet to see him get hurt. Even though he has been dropped by Conor McGregor, for example, he was never truly hurt in that fight or any other fight besides the Josh Thompson fight. And if we are going to take a look at his stamina, Nate has always been a fighter with great stamina and great endurance. He can go 5 rounds without a problem, and many times has he been the fighter that can really dig deeper and output just a little bit more than his opponents. So for that reason, a 96 seems to be right. Now with the fighter cards concluded, let us take a closer look at the full breakdown of this fight. Now before we start the breakdown, I think we have to set our expectations accordingly to what the match will kind of look like. In my opinion, the fight will predominantly play out in the stand-up department. I don't expect Nate Diaz to keep the fight on the floor. In my opinion, if there is a fighter out of the two to shoot him for a takedown and keep the fight down and attempt a submission, it is most likely going to be Nate Diaz. I don't see Jorge doing it, so Nate is probably the only guy that would do that. However, knowing Nate Diaz, he has never been the type of fighter to shoot in for that many takedowns anyway. He always had his opponents shoot in on him, and that way he got most of his takedowns. The same way he did it to Melvin Guillard was the same way that he did it to Conor McGregor. These guys just shoot in on him and he just counters them. And physically speaking, I don't think that Nate Diaz can take down Jorge Masvidal. I think Masvidal's takedown defense is very good, so because of those reasons, I am expecting a stand-up battle. Now, in this stand-up battle, we have two opposite styles. We have a very slick, fast, quick, respectably powerful fighter in Jorge Masvidal with additionally good combinations, good cardio. And if you take a look at Nate Diaz, Nate is a very, I'd say, relentless fighter, not so fast compared to Jorge Masvidal, has the ability to continuously back the opponent up, make it a really close up phone booth fight that not a lot of people can deal well against, and not a lot of people can keep Nate Diaz off of them. They cannot really dictate the distance. They cannot really go ahead and back Nate Diaz up, and a lot of the times if you have Nate Diaz coming forward the entire time, you're really either trying to fight your way out of it or just defend the entire time. Either way, you're not going to be winning any rounds because of it. Now, how much do I expect pressure to play a role in this match? To begin the entire fight in the first round, I would highly doubt that Nate Diaz is going to have the same type of pressure displayed against Anthony Pettis against Jorge Masvidal. And there are a couple of reasons for this. If you take a look at Anthony Pettis, he is a predominant kicker. And what do you do against a kicker? You go ahead and walk into a range where kicks are not going to be a viable option. Now, what does this mean? This means pressure. And if you back up Anthony Pettis, he has always been a fighter who could not really deal well against pressure. And Nate Diaz being a predominant pressure fighter, this seemed like a big opportunity for him to capitalize. Also, it was a 3-round fight, so Nate Diaz could not have a single moment off in that fight, because all it takes is just for him to lose 2 rounds and the fight is over and done with. Anthony Pettis is the winner. However, in this matchup, Jorge Masvidal is a very well-rounded fighter with great boxing, great footwork. He is not backed up easily, has a firm Muay Thai stance. And if we take all of that and compare that to Nate Diaz's own style, who really likes to get into his groove later down in the fight. So early on in the fight, I don't really expect too much pressure. Now, this could mean that we will be left with a chess match like pace where both fighters are, feeling each other out high and low, going through the motions, which is typically the case for the first round of any fight. And in that round, I will say that I am expecting Jorge Masvidal to have the better jab, the better footwork, and the better overall kicking game. Now, his kicking game is very underrated. I think that he has a quick and very powerful body kick, and against Nate Diaz, I'd say that not a lot of people try to go to his body. Now, that is not really quite the surprise now, is it? Given the fact that Nate Diaz can go ahead and maybe catch the kick, drag to the floor, and you're in his world, which you don't really want to be. However, I do believe that the quickness that Jorge Masvidal executes those kicks with is going to be something that will play a big factor in this match. Now, Jorge Masvidal, he's a fighter that likes to fight at the end of his reach. And I would expect him to have a lot of success on the outside in this match. I don't really think that Nate Diaz will start to have his own success early on, but I think that later down in the fight, there will be openings that Nate Diaz will see and he will capitalize them. And there's only so much outside fighting that you can do against Nate Diaz before he starts to walk you down and really get into his own groove, pressure you, and make you really go all defense mode. Especially when outside fighting is what you want to do, but the opponent is taller than you, rangier than you, and is a southpaw fighter, which Nate Diaz obviously is. So if you look at it in that way, we're going to be seeing that in this 5-round fight, just outside fighting and picking shots from Masvidal's side won't really be enough compared to the consistent pressure that Nate Diaz will present. Now, we're speaking of Jorge Masvidal here, so he's not just a regular outside fighter. He is a very well-balanced fighter that can fight on the outside, fight in the medium range, and fight pretty close up as well. So both of these fighters have their own ways of gaining success in this bout, and come fight night, we will just have to wait and see who will prevail. But before time will tell what will truly happen, who do I think will win come fight night? When it comes to my prediction, I am picking Jorge Gamebred Masvidal to win by a unanimous decision. The reason why I'm picking Jorge Masvidal is because of the fact that I just see a lot of openings that Nate Diaz, just by coming forward, cannot really take care of. Usually when opponents cannot really take the pressure, they kind of crumble, and those guys tend to be predominantly leaning more so in one way of fighting. When you take a look at Nate Diaz versus Anthony Pettis, predominant kicker, doesn't really take pressure all too well. Conor McGregor, predominant forward pressure fighter, and when he starts to fade, usually after the first 3 rounds, Nate Diaz will still be strong and he will be in your face. When it comes to Masvidal, I don't really see him as a fighter who has particularly bad stamina. I think he can go 5 rounds without a problem. Now with the leg kicks, with the body kicks, with the snappy jabs, and I would be able to say that Jorge Masvidal is the more complete fighter, and right now he seems to be pretty prime, he's pretty active. Nate Diaz only came off of 1 fight, and Jorge Masvidal just came off of 2 training camps, so I'd say he's a bit sharper. But in the end, only time will tell what will truly happen. For now, this was just my prediction. Who do you guys think will win come fight night? Leave it all in the comment section down below. As always, I have been kenanK from kenanK TV. Signing off. Later.